I interviewed a family friend whose grandfather, Reuben Gross, came to the United States sometime around 1900. He was born in 1884 in a small village in a rural part of Austria. Reuben was the second son to come to the United States. He came because the Austrian army was conscripting boys who were 17, and everyone in the village knew that once a Jewish boy was drafted into the army, he never came out alive. As soon as someone in the village got close to the age where he would join the army, families would come together and ship that person off. Reuben left from Hamburg, Germany on a boat called the Graf Walder See. He was 16 years old and he traveled alone with terrible accommodations. When he arrived at Ellis Island, he was met by his brother who instantly took him to work in a factory. Reuben hated working in large factories and found a job working as a tailor in a smaller factory. He became a tailor and eventually rose to being a cutter. Reuben was a cutter for the rest of his life. Reuben was a kind and optimistic man, and the only thing that upset him was the difference between the wages paid to the workers and the money earned by the owners of the factories. Reuben married when he was 21, and he and his wife Fanny had 5 children. When the Depression came, Reuben was able to hold on to his job, but the factory owner cut his wages. During those years, Reuben and the whole family were really hungry, but they refused to go on welfare. Reuben decided the answer to poverty lay in unions, and he became a big supporter of the unions with other tailors. Very often, the men would have meetings in the cold water flat where he lived. Reuben decided that unions were the answer to the poor man's problems, and he was very active in a union that was trying to protect tailors who worked in factories. However, the union did not become powerful and was not effective at protecting its members. This outcome may have come about because its members were mostly immigrants who didn't speak English properly, or because the Depression hit during the time when the union was organizing. Whatever the reason, wages didn't go up. In fact, they either went down or workers were let go during slow times. During the Depression, Reuben's faith in unions never wavered. He thought that capitalism caused a dividing line in society that couldn't be crossed unless unions could protect workers. Unfortunately, the Depression was not a time when unions were powerful, especially his small union. Everyone suffered during the Depression, and no one was particularly concerned about factory workers or immigrants. The wages of factory workers didn't begin to cover the cost of living, and few people even had steady jobs. Whenever Reuben lost his job, the family had to move to another tenement that was even worse than the previous one. They probably moved 12 times in the 1930s. Reuben saw the terrible wages of factory workers and the dreadful conditions of immigrants and compared that to the other people who had money. He believed it was too large a disparity and that the entire economic system had to be changed. However, Reuben lacked any political clout, and his beliefs remained just that, beliefs. He didn't act on them. Still, he felt good that he was able to voice his opinions, which he did whenever economics or politics was discussed. He didn't envy wealthy people, but he felt that it was wrong for some people to be incredibly rich, while most others barely were scraping by. Reuben's experience can't be called an ideal version of the American dream, but his commitment for fighting for higher wages inspired his children and grandchildren and gave them more opportunities to realize their own American dreams. If Reuben had stayed in Austria, he would have been killed right after he was drafted, or he would have been killed during the Holocaust, which is what happened to his sisters and many other relatives. He also was happy that he got away from his farm, and he loved living in New York City, tenements and all. Here in the United States, he was able to speak his mind. He loved union meetings, and he loved thinking that he was going to make a positive change. He didn't, of course, but he did live a relatively happy life. Reuben's story shows that the first generation is more subjected to the hardships of immigrating to a new country. But with hard work, courage, and drive, one can help lead the later generations to a brighter future. In the United States, Reuben was poor, but he was treated as a human being. In Austria, he would have always had been regarded as a worthless Jew. In the United States, he could organize unions and voice his opinions. Reuben's dream to get off the farm and live in the city did come true. It's true the wage gap always disturbed him, but he did experience a better life in the United States.